Update, at my wife's family barbecue, my wife's sister made a joke. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. Everyone laughed except me. I just raised my hot dog and said, challenge accepted. I moved out that night, cut contact, and vanished. A year later, there. Part 2. Everyone burst out laughing. And to top it off, her sister added, I didn't even know you weren't around. It was meant to be a joke, sure, but not to me. So, I raised my hot dog like it was a glass of wine, gave a half smile, and said, challenge accepted. Nobody said anything after that. A few people glanced at me, probably thinking I was joking, too, but I wasn't. That was the moment I made the decision. I was done being invisible in my own life. By the time the barbecue finally died down and most of the guests had left, the house was still buzzing faintly. This was the night I was already thinking of leaving the marriage. And with what was said to me today, I wasn't going to wait for things to get worse. I didn't need much, just the basics. A couple of clothes, my laptop, important documents, and cash in a duffel bag. Before walking out the door, I left a copy of the signed divorce papers right in the middle of the kitchen counter where she'd have to see it in the morning with a yellow sticky note placed neatly on top. It said, you noticed yet? Then I walked out, locked the door behind me, got into my car, and drove off. That same night, I deleted every social media account tied to my name. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, gone. Then I pulled out my old prepaid phone, swapped out the SIM card, and tossed the original one into a storm drain at a gas station 2 towns over. I didn't want to be found, not by her, not by anyone. I just couldn't keep hurting myself by staying. I drove to a small cabin I had seen earlier that was listed on an obscure classified site owned by a retired guy who didn't ask too many questions. I paid 3 months up front in cash. It was deep enough in the woods to feel like the world had forgotten about it, but close enough to a town that I could grab groceries when I needed. I made a living doing small freelance gigs online. It paid just enough to cover food, electricity, and the few basic needs I allowed myself. The days bled into each other. There was no schedule and no pressure. I'd wake up to the sound of birds. Weeks turned into months. My beard grew out. I started eating better, sleeping deeper, and thinking clearly. Not once did I check on Julie because I finally realized I didn't need to. That chapter was closed. And no good ever comes from reopening a wound just to see if it still bleeds. 8 months since I left, I got the idea to check one of my old email accounts, checking for some personal file I backed up years ago. It was one I hadn't logged into since before I left. I wasn't expecting anything. The moment I opened the inbox, I froze. There were dozens of emails, all from Julie. At first, I didn't know what to think. Part of me didn't want to read them. I hovered over the delete button more than once, but eventually I clicked. The earliest ones were furious. She was demanding to know where I went. She called me selfish, a coward, and heartless. Said I was abandoning her, that I had no right to just vanish. She swore she'd find me and drag me to court. Her words were sharp. But as I moved through the emails chronologically, the tone changed. Her words started softening. There were still questions, but they weren't filled with rage anymore. They were unsure, hesitant, like she was beginning to hear her own voice in the silence I left behind. The most recent ones hit me differently. I remember staring at one in particular. She said the bank had started sending warnings, something about missed payments, that foreclosure might be coming. She admitted she was now working 2 jobs, trying to keep the house afloat. Said she had to send her sister and the kids away. They weren't helping, she wrote like she finally saw what I had been trying to explain for years. In one message, she said, I get it now. I understand why you were so distant. I just wish I hadn't been so blind. Another one read, I wish you'd come home. Not because I need help, but because I miss you. Because I finally understand what you gave up trying to hold everything together. Then came the one that took the wind out of me. She wrote, I was stupid. I took you for granted. I thought you'd always be around no matter how much I ignored you. I still haven't signed the divorce papers. I keep hoping one day you'll walk through the door. I sat there staring at that screen. I won't lie to you. I felt something. My chest itched reading those words. I knew that side of her. The side that could love deeply. The side that wanted to build something with me once. And maybe this was that version of her finally pushing through the noise. But feelings aren't enough sometimes. For years, I stayed in the house convincing myself that love would fix things, that time would heal. But now, even reading those emails, as emotional as they were, I didn't know if I could ever step back into that life. At this point, it had been exactly a year since I vanished. A full year of living off the grid, cutting ties, and breathing freely for the first time in a long time. I only went into town once every couple of weeks for supplies. That day, I stopped by this little coffee shop I'd come to like. It was tucked away on the edge of the city. I walked in, ordered my usual, and was waiting at the pickup counter when I heard someone say my name. At first, I ignored it, but the second time it came, firmer, more surprised, I turned. It was Ryan, an old mutual friend. His eyes widened like he'd just seen a ghost, which I guess in a way he had. We exchanged awkward small talk. I kept it brief, didn't give much away. Less than a week later, there was a knock at my cabin door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I peeked through the curtain, and there she was, Julie. For a moment, I didn't move. I opened the door slowly, keeping my expression flat. What do you want? I asked. She didn't speak as she just broke down, sobbing. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't know it had gotten that bad. That she wished she'd listened more and understood sooner. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. When she finished, I stepped outside with her, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, I'll come back, but only to end this the right way. I'll sign what needs signing. We'll wrap this up like adults. But I can't be your husband again. Not after everything. Not after what your sister put me through. Not after you stood by and let it happen. She didn't argue. There was no fight left in her. Just a slow nod. She wiped her face, tried to smile, but couldn't. And with that, she left. Having reflected on everything. It's strange how people only begin to see the value of something or someone when it's already gone. That's one of the hardest lessons life teaches you. And sadly, it's a lesson I had to give and also live through. For years, I stayed in a marriage that was clearly falling apart. But what nobody tells you is that love can't survive when one person is trying and the other has emotionally checked out. I endured the constant disrespect, the belittling, the chaos that came with my sister-in-law and her kids because I loved Julie. I became invisible in my own home. But the crazy thing is, it all only started making sense to her after I vanished. That's when she realized what I had been trying to say all along. And maybe that's what some people need, the absence of what they always assumed would stay. So, if you're watching this and you're in a situation where you feel like your presence is being taken for granted, I hope my story gives you something to think about. Don't wait until you're broken just to prove that you are whole. And if you're someone who's been pushing someone away, ask yourself why it takes their absence for you to finally see their worth. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on all this. Drop a comment. Share your own experience. If you've been through something similar, or even if you haven't, tell me what you think. And if you know someone who might need to hear this kind of story today, please share it with them. You never know who's sitting quietly with their bags already packed, just waiting for one more reason to disappear. Thanks for being here.